The massive command ship hung in space like a dark metal moon. Its surface was black as the void between stars, covered with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge, his four arms crossed behind his back. As he watched the green planet below, another world was about to fall. Another species would bow before the might of the Velkan Empire. It was always the same. Always so easy. Commander, his aide spoke in their clicking language. The target world shows no signs of military response. Their primitive ships are fleeing to the outer system. Zethkar's large eyes reflected the light from the tactical display. 237 worlds had surrendered to him over the past 50 years. Not one had fought back. Not one had even tried to resist once they saw what the Velkan fleet could do. The secret was simple. Fear worked better than violence. Why destroy a world when you could make it surrender without firing a shot? The Velkans had learned this truth long ago. They would arrive with overwhelming force, demonstrate their power, and watch as entire civilizations gave up hope in a matter of hours. "Begin the demonstration," Zethkar ordered. On the viewing screen, the planet's largest moon filled the display. It was a dead rock, covered in craters and ancient ice. Perfect for what came next. A single beam of energy lanced out from the Velkan flagship. The moon simply vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was a cloud of glowing particles spreading across space. The planet below would see their moon disappear in their night sky. They would understand what kind of power they faced. Zethkar's aide checked the communication channels. "The planet's leaders are requesting immediate contact, Commander. They wish to discuss terms of surrender." Of course they do. Zethkar allowed himself a small smile. His sharp teeth gleamed in the bridge lights. "Put them through." The screen showed a group of frightened aliens. They had blue skin and large heads, typical of species that evolved on high-gravity worlds. Their leader was shaking as he spoke. "Great. Ones from the stars," the alien leader said in broken galactic standard. "We have seen your power. We do not wish to fight. Tell us what you want from our world." Zethkar stepped forward. His towering form would intimidate these creatures even more. "Your world now belongs to the Velkan Empire. Your people will serve us. Your resources will feed our fleets. You have 1 hour to broadcast your surrender to every city on your planet. Any resistance will result in the complete destruction of your world." The alien leader's large eyes filled with tears. "We understand. We will comply immediately." The transmission ended. Zethkar turned away from the screen, already bored. Another world conquered without losing a single Velkan life. Another species that chose slavery over death. "Sir," his aide reported, "all major population centers are broadcasting surrender messages. Resistance forces are laying down their weapons. The planet is ours." Zethkar nodded. He had seen this. Same scene hundreds of times. The pattern never changed. Show overwhelming force. Demonstrate the ability to destroy everything they loved and watch as hope died in their eyes. No species in the galaxy had ever chosen to fight against impossible odds. His personal communicator buzzed with an incoming message from the Imperial Command. Admiral Kethral's face appeared on the small screen. The Admiral's scarred features showed approval. "Excellent work as always, Commander. Another bloodless victory for the Empire." "Thank you, Admiral. The local population is already preparing. Tribute shipments. We should have full integration within 6 months." "Good. I have your next assignment ready. There's a small human colony in the outer rim. Intelligence reports suggest they're a young species with limited technology. Should be a simple operation. Zethkar's interest peaked slightly. He had heard rumors about humans, but had never encountered them directly. What do we know about their military capabilities? Primitive chemical rockets and basic energy weapons. They've only had space travel for a few hundred years. Their largest ships are smaller than our escort vessels. Admiral Kethral's expression showed mild amusement. Intelligence suggests they're actually quite aggressive among themselves. Constant wars and conflicts. But that should make them easier to break. Warlike species often fold quickly when they see truly superior force. How many worlds do they control? Just a handful of colonies. Their home world and maybe 6 or 7 settlements. The target colony has maybe 1 million inhabitants. 1 show of force, and they'll surrender like all the others. Zethkar felt a familiar anticipation building. A new species to conquer. A new world to add to his perfect record. When do we depart? Immediately. Take the standard intimidation fleet. 20 ships should be more than enough to terrify these humans into submission. The Admiral paused. Intelligence also reports that humans have something called nuclear weapons that they use against each other. Apparently, they're willing to destroy their own cities in warfare. Fascinating but irrelevant. Such primitive weapons won't even scratch our shields. The transmission ended. Zethkar felt pleased. Humans sounded interesting, a species that fought. Each other so fiercely might provide some entertainment before they inevitably surrendered. Within hours, the Velkan fleet was moving through hyperspace toward the human colony world designated as New Haven. Zethkar reviewed the intelligence reports during the journey. Humans were carbon-based, roughly half the size of Velkans, and lived short lives of less than a century. They had pale skin and small eyes, typical of species from worlds with bright stars. The reports described their history of constant warfare. They fought over territory, resources, ideas, even things they called religion and politics. They had weapons designed specifically to kill as many of their own kind as possible. They had even developed bombs that could poison entire continents. Such a violent species should be easy to intimidate. In Zethkar's experience, the most aggressive species were often the most cowardly when faced with superior force. They understood violence and its consequences. They would see the Velkan fleet and immediately calculate their chances of survival. The answer would be 0, just like always. As the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the human system, Zethkar prepared for another routine conquest. He would demonstrate Velkan power, watch the humans despair, and add another world to his perfect record. He had no idea that this small human colony was about to end 2 centuries of bloodless Velkan. Victories. Captain Jake Sullivan was drinking his morning coffee when the universe changed forever. The hot liquid had just touched his lips when the communication system on the USS Defiance screamed to life with emergency signals. "Captain, to the bridge." Communications Officer Beth Carter's voice carried an edge of panic. "We have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge." Jake set down his coffee and ran through the narrow corridors of his ship. The Defiance was an old patrol frigate, built 30 years ago when Earth was still learning how to make starships that didn't fall apart. She wasn't much to look at, but she was home to Jake and his crew of 12. The bridge was chaos when he arrived. Every screen showed the same impossible sight. 20 massive ships hung in space at the edge of the New Haven system. Each one was the size of a city, dark and threatening against the stars. "Size estimate?" Jake asked as he dropped into his captain's chair. "The smallest one is 5 times bigger than us. reported sensor operator Danny Wright. His young face was pale as he read the displays. The biggest one, I can't even get accurate readings. It's huge, Captain. Beth Carter turned from her communications console. I'm picking up energy signatures I've never seen before. These aren't human ships. First contact. After 300 years of space, travel, humanity had finally met an alien civilization. Jake should have felt excitement or wonder. Instead, cold fear settled in his stomach. 20 warships didn't come to say hello. Any communication from them? Jake asked. Nothing yet. But Governor Barnes is trying to reach us from the planet. The main screen flickered to show Governor Lisa Barnes in her office on New Haven. The middle-aged woman looked calm, but Jake could see tension in her eyes. Behind her, other government officials rushed around in barely controlled panic. "Jake, thank God," Lisa said. "Are you seeing what we're seeing?" 20 alien ships, each one big enough to house a small city. "Yeah, I'm seeing it." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "What's the evacuation status?" "We've got transport ships loading civilians, but it'll take days to evacuate everyone. The freight haulers can take maybe 10,000 people per trip." Lisa's voice cracked slightly. "We have nearly 1 million people on New Haven." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The Defiance was the only military ship in the system. One small frigate against 20 alien warships. The math was simple and terrifying. "Captain," Beth Carter called out, "I'm receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. Audio only." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with static. Then a voice spoke in perfect English. The words were clear, but the tone was wrong. Too deep, too measured, like someone reading from a script. "Attention human settlement. This is Commander Zethkar of the Velkan Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately and prepare for integration into our empire. Resistance is futile. You have 1 hour to respond with your complete surrender." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge as Jake's crew absorbed what they had just heard. Surrender. 1 hour. Complete capitulation to an enemy they had never seen before. "Sir," Danny Wright spoke quietly, "long-range sensors are showing energy buildups on several of the alien ships. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big." Jake stood up and walked to the main viewing screen. The alien ships hung there like dark omens, blocking out the stars. He thought about his crew, all volunteers who had signed up to protect human colonies. He thought about the 1 million people on New Haven, families and children who had come here to build new lives. "Beth, open a channel to the alien fleet." "Channel open, sir." Jake took a deep breath. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in Earth's last great war. The old man had always said that some things were worth fighting for, even when you couldn't win. Especially when you couldn't win. This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the Earth Defense Force vessel Defiance. This is human space. Turn around and leave. Beth Carter stared at him in shock. Around the bridge, his crew looked at their captain like he had lost his mind. Danny Wright actually whispered, "Sir, did you just tell them to leave?" "Yes, I did." Jake kept his eyes on the screen. "And I meant every word." The response came quickly. The alien voice sounded confused, as if they couldn't understand what Jake had said. "Human vessel, you did not respond with surrender terms. Repeat your message." Jake smiled grimly. "Message received and understood, alien ship. This is my response. Leave our system now, or we'll make you leave." This time, The silence stretched longer. Jake could almost feel the confusion from the alien fleet. They probably had never heard someone refuse their demands before. "Beth, send a message to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Full data burst. Everything we know about these aliens. Make sure they know we made contact and what happened next." "Sir." Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell spoke up from his station. "I've been analyzing their ships. The energy readings are off the charts. If they decide to fight..." "I know, Ryan. We can't win." Jake turned to face his crew. "I want everyone to understand what's happening here. Those aliens just demanded our surrender. They want to enslave every human on New Haven. Anyone who wants to leave can take a shuttle to the planet. No shame in it." Nobody moved. Beth Carter spoke for all of them. "Where you go, we go, Captain." Jake felt pride swell in his chest. These were good people, brave people. They deserved better than dying in a hopeless fight against impossible odds. But sometimes the universe didn't give you better options. "Governor Barnes," Jake said into the communication system, "get those evacuation ships moving, all of them. Don't stop until every civilian is off the planet." "Jake, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to buy you as much time as possible." Jake looked at his crew one more time. "If these aliens want New Haven, they're going to have to go through us first." The governor's image faded from the screen. Around the bridge, Jake's crew began preparing for battle. Ryan Mitchell pushed the reactor beyond safe limits. Danny Wright armed what few weapons the Defiance carried. Beth Carter began broadcasting warnings to any human ships in the system. Outside, 20 alien warships waited in the darkness. Each one could probably destroy the Defiance without effort, but Jake Sullivan had made his choice. Some things were worth fighting for, even when fighting meant dying. The aliens were about to learn something new about humans. They were about to discover that not every species could be frightened into surrender. Commander Zethkar stared at the communication display in complete confusion. In 50 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to his surrender demand with a threat. The human words made no sense in any context he understood. "Aid," he called in the Velkin language. "Play back the human transmission." The bridge speakers repeated Captain Sullivan's message. "This is human space. Turn around and leave." Around the bridge, Zethkar's officers made clicking sounds of bewilderment. The human ship was tiny, barely visible on their sensors. A single frigate against the entire First Fleet. Yet the human commander had ordered them to leave. "Perhaps their translation systems are malfunctioning," suggested Navigation Officer Yethmar. "They may not understand what we said." "Send the message again," Zethkar ordered. "Use their primitive binary language codes. Make sure they understand exactly what we're offering them." Beth Carter's voice came back within minutes. "Message received, Commander. Our translation systems work fine. Our answer hasn't changed. Leave now." Zethkar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: confusion. Every species in the galaxy knew about Velkin power. Stories of their conquests spread faster than their fleets, yet these humans acted like they had never heard of the Empire. "Sir," reported Weapons Officer Kraltek, "intelligence files show this species is extremely violent among themselves. Perhaps they don't understand the concept of surrender." That made some sense. Zethkar had encountered stubborn species before, though none quite this foolish. The solution was always the same: a demonstration of power that would crush their spirit and show them the futility of resistance. "Target the asteroid belt in this system," Zethkar commanded. "Prepare a full destruction display." On the main screen, the asteroid belt appeared. Thousands of rocks drifted in lazy orbits around the system's star. It was perfect for what came next. The belt had no strategic value, but destroying it would show the humans what Vulcan weapons could do. All ships fire when ready. 20 Vulcan warships opened fire at once. Energy beams that could crack planets reached out across space and touched the asteroid belt. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the rocks began to glow. One by one, then in groups, then all at once. The asteroids exploded into brilliant clouds of light. What had been solid rock became shining dust. The entire belt became a glowing ribbon of particles that would sparkle in New Haven's sky for years to come. Zethkar watched the display with satisfaction. No species could see such power and still think about fighting. The humans would understand now. They would see that resistance meant the complete destruction of everything they valued. "Open communication to the human ship," he ordered. Jake Sullivan appeared on the screen. He was smaller than Zethkar had expected, with pale skin and tiny eyes. But there was something in his expression that made the Vulcan commander uncomfortable. The human didn't look afraid. He looked angry. "Human commander," Zethkar said in his most intimidating voice, "you have seen what our weapons can do. That asteroid belt contained millions of tons of rock. We destroyed it in seconds. Imagine what we could do to your planet. Surrender now, and your people will live as servants of the Empire. Continue to resist, and we will erase every trace of human presence from this system." Jake Sullivan listened to the entire speech without changing expression. When Zethkar finished, the human captain leaned forward in his chair and spoke with deadly calm. "You just destroyed millions of years of formation in our system. You turned our asteroid belt into cosmic dust. That makes you an enemy of humanity." Sullivan's voice got harder with each word. "Here's our new response, alien. Prepare to face the consequences." The transmission ended. Zethkar stared at the blank screen in complete shock. The human had seen the destruction of the asteroid belt and become more defiant, not less. It made no sense according to any psychological warfare manual in the Vulcan military. "Sir," his aide reported, "the human ship is moving toward our fleet." "Moving toward us?" Zethkar checked the tactical display. The tiny human frigate had indeed changed course. Instead of fleeing or taking a defensive position near the planet, it was heading directly for the Vulcan fleet. "Confirm that reading." "Confirmed, sir. The human vessel is on an intercept course with our formation. Estimated contact in 47 minutes. Zethkar felt something cold settle in his stomach. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had ever deliberately moved toward his fleet. Ships fled or hid or tried to negotiate. They didn't charge directly at overwhelming odds. "Perhaps it's a surrender approach," suggested his aide hopefully. Before Zethkar could respond, Beth Carter's voice filled the bridge again. But this time, she wasn't talking to the Vulcans. She was broadcasting on all frequencies, sending a message that would reach every human ship in the system and beyond. "This is the USS Defiance to all human vessels and colonies. We are under attack by an alien fleet demanding our surrender. They have destroyed our asteroid belt as a show of force. We are moving to engage the enemy. If we don't survive this fight, make sure Earth knows what happened here. Make sure they know we didn't surrender. Make sure they know we fought back." The broadcast ended. Zethkar stared at his displays as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just refusing to surrender. They were preparing to fight. One tiny ship against 20 massive warships. "This is impossible," Yethmar whispered. "No species behaves this way." Zethkar had to agree. Every conquest followed the same pattern. show overwhelming force, demonstrate the ability to destroy their world, watch them surrender in despair. But these humans had seen his power and chosen to attack instead. "Sir," Kraltek reported, "the human ship is broadcasting another message. This one is directed at us." "Put it through." Captain Sullivan's face appeared again. This time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, Zethkar could see other humans working at control stations. They looked calm and determined, like soldiers preparing for a battle they expected to win. "Commander Zethkar," Sullivan said, "I want you to understand something. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've fought each other over land, water, food, ideas, and things that probably don't translate into your language. We know what war looks like. We know what dying looks like." Sullivan paused and looked directly into the camera. "What we don't know is how to surrender to alien invaders who think they can just show up and take our worlds. So we're going to teach you something new today. We're going to show you what happens when you threaten human colonies." The transmission ended again. Zethkar felt a chill run through his body that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. For the first time in his military career, he was facing an enemy that couldn't be intimidated, an enemy that chose to fight impossible odds rather than accept defeat. "All ships," he commanded, "prepare for combat. The humans appear to have chosen death over surrender." As the Velkin fleet powered up their weapons, Zethkar watched the small human ship continue its approach. Captain Sullivan had made his choice. His crew had made their choice. They were going to die fighting rather than live as slaves. Zethkar had conquered hundreds of worlds, but he had never faced anything like this before. Zethkar watched the human ship approach and felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. The small vessel continued on its collision course with his fleet, showing no signs of changing direction or reconsidering its suicidal attack. "Perhaps we should try a larger demonstration," suggested his aide nervously. "The asteroid belt may not have been impressive enough." Zethkar considered this. The humans had seen him destroy millions of tons of rock, but maybe they needed something more personal, something that would hit closer to home and finally break their inexplicable determination to resist. "Target the planet's moons," he ordered. New Haven had 2 moons. The larger one was covered in ice and had several small mining stations. The smaller moon was just a rock, but it would be visible from the planet's surface. Destroying both would send an unmistakable message about what could happen to the planet itself. "Sir," Kraltek hesitated at his weapons console. "The larger moon has human installations. There may be people there. Are you questioning my orders?" Zethkar's voice carried a dangerous edge. "No, sir. Targeting both moons now." The Velkin flagship's main weapon charged with a deep humming sound that filled the bridge. On the viewing screen, the 2 moons hung in space like tiny worlds. In a few moments, they would be nothing but expanding clouds of debris. Fire. The beam lanced out across space, invisible except where it touched matter. The smaller moon simply vanished, turned to vapor in an instant. The larger moon lasted a few seconds longer before it too became an expanding ball of glowing gas and rock fragments. Zethkar felt satisfaction return. The humans on the planet would look up at their night sky and see empty space where their moons used to be. They would understand that their world could meet the same fate. Surely this would finally break their spirit, open a channel to the human ship, he commanded. Captain Sullivan appeared on screen again. Behind him, Zethkar could see sparks flying from damaged equipment. The human ship was old and poorly maintained. It should have been running away, not approaching certain death. "Human commander," Zethkar said with forced patience. "You have now seen what happens to those who defy the Velkan Empire. Your planet's moons are gone. Those mining stations had people on them. Their deaths are on your hands. Surrender now, and prevent the complete destruction of your world." Sullivan listened without expression. When Zethkar finished, the human captain turned to someone off-screen and said something in a quiet voice. Then he looked back at the camera with eyes that seemed to burn with inner fire. "You just murdered innocent miners who never did anything to you," Sullivan said with deadly calm. "People who were just trying to make a living in space. You killed them to make a point?" His voice grew harder. "That was a mistake." Before Zethkar could respond, Sullivan continued. "You want to know what that demonstration taught us? It taught us that you're not just conquerors, you're murderers. And humanity has a very simple policy when it comes to murderers. The human," Captain leaned forward in his chair. "We kill them." The transmission ended. Zethkar stared at the blank screen in growing alarm. He had just demonstrated the ability to destroy entire worlds, and the human response was to become more aggressive. It went against everything he understood about psychology and warfare. "Sir," his aide reported with panic in his voice, "the human ship is accelerating toward us. They're increasing speed." "That's impossible. They just saw us destroy their moons." "Confirmed. Sir, the human vessel is moving faster now. They're also broadcasting another message." "Put it through." This time it wasn't Sullivan speaking. A woman's voice filled the bridge, speaking with the same deadly determination Zethkar had heard from the captain. "This is Communications Officer Beth Carter of the USS Defiance. We are transmitting our final battle log to all human vessels and Earth Command. The alien fleet has destroyed our system's asteroid belt and both moons of New Haven. They have murdered innocent civilians to try to frighten us into surrender." The woman's voice grew stronger. "We want Earth to know that we did not surrender. We want them to know that when aliens came to enslave our people, we fought back. We want them to know that some things are worth dying for." The broadcast continued. "To the alien commander who thinks he can intimidate humans by killing innocents, you picked the wrong species. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to die. What we don't know is how to give up." The transmission switched back to Captain Sullivan. "Commander Zethkar, you wanted to see human nature. You're about to get a very clear demonstration. When you destroy someone's home, when you murder their people, when you threaten their freedom, humans don't surrender. We get angry. And angry, humans are very dangerous." Sullivan paused, then delivered his final message. "You have exactly 35 minutes before we reach your fleet. Use that time to run away, because if you're still here when we arrive, we're going to ram our ship down your throat." The screen went black. Zethkar stood in stunned silence as his bridge crew absorbed what they had just heard. The humans were going to ram them. A suicide attack against impossible odds. "Sir," Yethmar spoke with awe in his voice, "I've never seen anything like this. They're actually accelerating toward certain death." "It's not possible," Zethkar said, but even as he spoke, he knew it was true. The tactical display showed the human ship moving faster and faster toward his fleet. "No species chooses extinction. Over surrender." "Sir," Kraltek called out, "I'm detecting power buildups on the human vessel. Their reactor is operating beyond safe limits. If they maintain this course and speed, they'll ram us," Zethkar finished. The cold feeling in his stomach was getting worse. "They're actually going to try to ram us." For the first time in his career, Zeth-Kar faced an enemy that couldn't be broken by demonstrations of power. The humans had seen his weapons destroy moons, and their response was to attack faster. They had watched their people die and chosen revenge over survival. "Orders, sir?" his aide asked quietly. Zeth-Kar looked at the tactical display. One small human ship against 20 Velkan warships. The outcome was certain. The humans would die, but they would die fighting. And somehow, that felt like a victory he didn't want to give them. "All ships, maintain formation," he ordered. "Prepare for close combat. The humans want to die as warriors. We'll give them what they want." As the USS Defiance continued its charge toward the Velkan fleet, Zeth-Kar realized something that chilled him to his core. His perfect record of bloodless conquests was about to end. Not because he had failed to demonstrate superior power, but because he had encountered a species that simply didn't care about superior power. The humans were coming, and they were very, very angry. The USS Defiance shook like a thing alive as Chief Engineer Ryan Mitchell pushed the reactor beyond every safety limit he had learned in 20 years of space service. Warning lights flashed red across his engineering station, and computer voices screamed about core breach and radiation warnings. "How much more can she take?" Captain Sullivan asked over the ship's communication system. "She'll hold together, Captain," Ryan replied, sweat dripping down his face as he manually overrode another. "Safety protocol. She's a tough old girl, built back when Earth still made ships to last." On the bridge, Weapons Officer Kelly Brooks watched her targeting displays with grim satisfaction. The Defiance only had 4 missile tubes and 2 energy cannons, weapons that were ancient compared to what the alien ships carried. But Kelly had trained on these systems for 8 years. She knew every bolt and circuit. "Missiles armed and ready," she reported. "I've got firing solutions on their lead ships." Captain Sullivan sat in his command chair and watched the alien fleet grow larger on the main screen. 20 massive warships waited for his tiny frigate like a pack of predators. Each one could destroy the Defiance without effort. But that wasn't the point anymore. The point was to make them remember this moment. "Beth, are you still broadcasting?" Sullivan asked. "Every word, Captain," Communications Officer Beth Carter replied. "Earth Command will know exactly what happened here." Sullivan nodded. That was what mattered. When other human colonies faced these aliens, they would know that someone had fought back. They would know that surrender wasn't the only option. "Danny, give me a damage assessment on the alien ships as we engage," Sullivan ordered. "I want to know if our weapons can hurt them." "Yes, sir," Sensor Operator Danny Wright replied. The young man's hands shook slightly, but his voice was steady. "Sensors are locked on their lead ship." The distance closed rapidly. 50,000 kilometers, 40,000, 30,000. The alien ships hung in space like dark mountains, their weapons tracking the approaching human vessel. "They're not firing," Kelly Brooks observed. "They could have destroyed us by now." "They want to see what we'll do," Sullivan said. "They've never faced anyone who wouldn't surrender. We're a curiosity to them." 20,000 kilometers. The alien ships filled the viewing screen now, black hulls covered with weapons that could crack planets. Warning signals echoed through the Defiance. As the aliens finally began charging their weapons, "Here they come," Sullivan said quietly. "All hands, brace for impact." The space around the Defiance exploded into light. Energy beams meant to destroy cities lanced past the small frigate as it twisted and turned through the alien formation. The ship's hull screamed as near misses superheated the metal. "They're not trying to hit us," Danny Wright reported in amazement. Those shots were warning shots. They still think we'll surrender, Sullivan realized. Fire everything, Kelly. The Defiance unleashed every weapon it carried. 4 missiles streaked toward the alien flagship while energy cannons carved bright lines across the darkness. The weapons were primitive compared to what the aliens possessed, but they were fired with human determination and skill. The missiles struck the alien flagship's shields and exploded in brilliant flowers of light. The energy cannons followed, adding their power to the attack. For a moment, the alien ship's shields flickered and wavered. "Direct hit!" Kelly shouted. "Their shields are fluctuating." Impossible. Danny Wright stared at his sensors. "Our weapons actually hurt them." The alien response was immediate and overwhelming. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids reached out for the Defiance. But Ryan Mitchell had pushed the ship's engines beyond their design limits, and Captain Sullivan had learned to fly in Earth's brutal colonial wars. The Defiance twisted through space like a fighter instead of a frigate. Energy beams passed through empty space where the ship had been moments before. The aliens were firing weapons designed to hit large, slow targets. They weren't ready for a small ship moving at impossible speeds. "Target their weapon clusters," Sullivan ordered. "If we're going to die, let's take some of them with us." Kelly Brooks worked her targeting computer with deadly precision. Each shot was calculated to hit the most vulnerable points on the alien ships. She couldn't penetrate their main armor, but weapon clusters and sensor arrays were softer targets. The Defiance carved through the alien formation like an angry wasp. Human weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat in close quarters struck again and again. Alien point defense systems tried to track the fast-moving frigate but couldn't match its speed and maneuverability. 2 alien ships have lost main weapons, Danny reported. "We're actually hurting them." But the impossible couldn't last forever. The Defiance shook as an energy beam grazed its hull, tearing away armor and venting atmosphere. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship. "Hull breach on deck 3, Ryan called out. "I'm sealing the compartments. How long can we keep this up?" Sullivan asked. "Reactors at 140%, Ryan replied. "She'll hold together for maybe 10 more minutes before we lose containment." Sullivan made his decision. "Set course for the alien flagship. Ramming speed!" "Sir?" Beth Carter turned from her communications station. "You heard me. Full ramming attack on their command ship. If we're going down, we're taking their leader with us." The Defiance turned toward the massive alien flagship. The ship was 5 times larger than the human frigate, covered in weapons and armor that could withstand planetary bombardment. But it had one weakness. It had never faced an enemy crazy enough to ram it. "Captain," Kelly Brooks said quietly, "it's been an honor serving with you." "The honor's been mine," Sullivan replied. "Ryan, everything you've got. Push her until she breaks." The reactor howled as Ryan Mitchell fed it every scrap of power the ship could generate. The Defiance accelerated toward the alien flagship like a missile, its hull glowing red from the strain. The aliens finally realized what the humans were planning. Energy beams reached out desperately, trying to stop the suicide attack. But the Defiance was moving too fast and had gotten too close. "Beth, final transmission," Sullivan ordered. "This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the USS Defiance," she broadcast on all frequencies. "We are about to ram the alien flagship. Tell Earth that we did not surrender. Tell them that humans fight back. Tell them to come for these murderers and make them pay." The alien flagship filled the viewing screen. Its weapons were firing continuously now, energy beams that turned the space around the Defiance into a storm of destruction. But human determination and an overloaded reactor had given the little ship just enough speed. "Impact in 10 seconds," Danny Wright called out. "It's been good flying with you all," Sullivan said. The USS Defiance struck the alien flagship at nearly 20% of light speed. The impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. The human ship's reactor breached at the moment of collision, adding its fury to the destruction. Both ships died together in a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the New Haven system like a new star. When the light faded, the alien flagship was gone. The Defiance was gone. Captain Sullivan and his crew were gone. But across the galaxy, other humans would receive Beth Carter's final transmission. They would learn that when aliens came to enslave humanity, one small ship had chosen to fight back. They would know that humans preferred death to surrender, and they would come looking for revenge. Admiral Peter Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution and watched the expanding debris field that had once been the USS Defiance. The wreckage told a story that filled him with both pride and cold fury. Jake Sullivan and his crew had chosen to ram an alien flagship rather than surrender. "How many alien ships survived?" Hayes asked his tactical officer. 19, sir," Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez reported from her station. The Defiance took their flagship and 2 escort vessels with them. Remarkable for a single frigate. Hayes nodded grimly. Jake Sullivan had been his student at the Naval Academy 15 years ago. The young man had always been stubborn and unwilling to accept defeat. Those qualities had gotten him killed, but they had also sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. "Sir," Communications Officer Robert Chen called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet." "Put it through." The main screen flickered to show an alien creature that looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares. Tall, with 4 arms and sharp teeth, the being spoke in heavily accented English. "Human fleet, this is Commander Zethkar of the Velkan Empire. You have entered a system under Imperial control. Your people attacked our ships without provocation. Surrender immediately and we will allow you to live as servants." Hayes studied the alien commander for a long moment. Behind Zethkar, he could see other aliens working at control stations. They looked nervous, which was interesting. These creatures had just destroyed a human ship, but they seemed afraid of the human fleet that had come to investigate. "Commander, Zethkar," Hayes said finally. "I am Admiral Peter Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. Let me explain something to you about humans. We received the final transmission from Captain Sullivan and his crew. We know exactly what happened here." Hayes stepped closer to the camera. "You murdered innocent miners on our moons. You demanded the surrender of our colony. You forced good people to choose between slavery and death. Then you seemed surprised when they chose death." The alien commander's large eyes showed confusion. "Your ship attacked us. We offered them life as part of our empire." "You offered them slavery," Hayes corrected. "And humans have a very simple response to anyone who tries to enslave us. We kill them." Zethkar's image flickered slightly. "Admiral, you have 30 ships. We have 19. Our technology is superior to yours. Our ships are larger and more powerful. Surrender now and avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Hayes smiled coldly. "Commander, I want you to understand something. My fleet contains veterans from the colonial wars, the Martian Rebellion, and the Europa conflict. These are people who have spent their entire careers fighting hopeless battles against impossible odds. We are very good at it." Behind Hayes, his crew continued their preparations for battle. Chief Engineer Sarah Kim pushed their reactor systems to combat readiness. Weapons Officer Lieutenant David Park armed every missile and energy cannon in the fleet. Navigation Officer Captain Lisa, Wong calculated attack vectors that would maximize damage to the alien formation. You think your technology gives you an advantage, Hayes continued. But you've never fought humans before. You've never faced an enemy that considers dying for freedom to be a privilege rather than a tragedy. The Admiral turned to his tactical display, showing the positions of both fleets. Captain Sullivan gave you a demonstration of human determination. Now I'm going to give you a lesson in human warfare. Zethkar's image showed growing alarm. Admiral, your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships are inferior to ours in every way. You're probably right, Hayes agreed. But there's something you don't understand about humans. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We know that superior technology doesn't always win battles. Sometimes spirit matters more than firepower. Hayes gestured to his crew. Do you see these people? They volunteered for this mission knowing they might not come home. They came anyway because Captain Sullivan's crew showed them what courage looks like. You murdered good people to make a point. Now we're here to return the favor. The alien commander tried again. Admiral, be reasonable. Your small fleet cannot defeat the might of the Velkan Empire. Surrender, and your deaths will be quick. Deaths? Hayes laughed. Commander, I don't think you understand what's happening here. You're not facing the entire human fleet. You're not even facing our best ships. This is just what we could gather on short notice to investigate a distress call. Hayes leaned forward. What do you think will happen when Earth learns that aliens tried to enslave one of our colonies? What do you think our response will be when we have time to prepare properly? For the first time, Zethkar looked genuinely frightened. You would risk war with the entire Velkan Empire over one small colony? Commander, Hayes said softly, humans have fought world wars over smaller insults than what you did here. You didn't just attack New Haven. You attacked the idea that humans can live free in the galaxy. That's not something we can let slide. The transmission ended abruptly. Hayes turned to his crew, who were waiting for orders with grim determination. These were veterans of humanity's worst conflicts. People who understood that some battles had to be fought, regardless of the odds. Listen up, Hayes announced to his fleet. The aliens destroyed Captain Sullivan's ship after he refused to surrender our colony. They think superior technology makes them invincible. They think we'll run away when we see their big ships and fancy weapons. Hayes paused, looking at each of his senior officers. They've never fought humans before. They don't know that we prefer dying on our feet to living on our knees. They're about to get an education. Sir, Amy Rodriguez reported, the alien ships are powering up weapons. Looks like they're preparing for combat. Good, Hayes replied. Sarah, push our reactors to combat power. David, prepare all weapons for concentrated fire. Lisa, plot ramming courses for every ship in the fleet. Ramming courses, sir, Lisa Wong asked for confirmation. You heard me. If our weapons can't crack their hulls, we'll do what Captain Sullivan did. We'll ram them until they break. Hayes settled into his command chair. All ships, prepare for battle. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember what they did to our people. As the human fleet moved toward the alien formation, Hayes felt the familiar calm that came before combat. He had fought in dozens of battles during humanity's expansion into space. He had seen good people die for causes that mattered. But this felt different. This wasn't just another battle between human factions. This was humanity's first war against an alien species that thought humans could be enslaved. The outcome would determine whether humans would live free in the galaxy or serve as slaves to creatures who measured strength only in terms of technology. Admiral, Robert Chen called out. I'm detecting panic communications between the alien ships. I think they're realizing we're not going to surrender. Hayes smiled grimly. No, we're not. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that first contact with aliens has resulted in hostilities. Tell them to prepare for war. The human fleet accelerated toward the alien ships like wolves closing on their prey. Behind them, the wreckage of the USS Defiance drifted in, space as a monument to human determination. Ahead, 19 alien warships waited with weapons that could destroy planets. But Admiral Hayes had faith in his people. They were human, and humans had never learned how to surrender. The battle began exactly as Commander Zethkar expected it would. His 19 remaining ships opened fire with weapons that could level cities, sending streams of energy across space toward the approaching human fleet. By all military logic, the human ships should have been vaporized instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships scattered like a flock of birds, each one moving in a different direction at speeds that should have torn their hulls apart. The Vulcan weapons, designed to destroy large formations of conventional warships, found themselves firing at empty space. "How are they moving so fast?" Yethmar demanded from his navigation station. Zethkar watched in growing alarm as the human ships twisted through space in patterns that defied military doctrine. Their ships were smaller and apparently more maneuverable than anything in the Vulcan fleet. More importantly, they were flown by pilots who seemed to have no regard for their own safety. All ships, adjust targeting for fast-moving targets, Zethkar ordered. But adjusting was easier said than done. The humans weren't flying in formation or following predictable attack patterns. Each ship moved independently, using tactics that seemed designed by madmen. Some ships flew directly toward the Vulcan fleet at maximum speed. Others circled around the flanks. A few actually flew underneath the Vulcan formation, attacking from angles no reasonable commander would expect. "Sir," Kraltek called out, "the human ship designated as their flagship is broadcasting a message to their fleet. Put it through." Admiral Hayes's voice filled the bridge, but he wasn't talking to the Vulcans. He was issuing orders to his captains in a tone that was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "All ships, execute Plan 7. Target their weapon clusters and engine sections. Remember, we don't have to destroy them completely. We just have to hurt them badly enough that they remember this fight." Plan 7? Zethkar had studied military tactics from 100 different species. No conventional battle plan involved. Splitting a smaller fleet into individual attack units while charging directly at superior firepower. The human attacks began hitting home. Captain Amy Rodriguez in the USS Vengeance led 3 ships in a coordinated strike against a Vulcan destroyer. Human missiles, primitive compared to Vulcan technology, struck the alien ship's weapon arrays with surgical precision. The destroyer didn't explode, but its main guns went silent. "They're targeting our weapons specifically," Yethmar reported. "These humans know exactly where to hit us." Before Zethkar could respond, another group of human ships attacked from a completely different angle. Captain Lisa Wong led her squadron in a high-speed pass that peppered 2 Vulcan cruisers with energy cannon fire. Again, the humans weren't trying to destroy the ships completely. They were methodically disabling weapons and engines. "Sir," Kraltek's voice carried panic, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from the human flagship. They're preparing for a ramming attack." Zethkar spun to face the tactical display. The USS Retribution was indeed accelerating directly toward his ship, its reactor pushed far beyond safe limits. Just like the first human ship had done, just like Captain Sullivan had done. "Evasive maneuvers," Zethkar commanded. But the human, Admiral had anticipated this. As the Vulcan command ship tried to turn away, other human vessels moved to block its escape routes. Admiral Hayes had positioned his fleet so that any attempt to evade the ramming attack would expose the Vulcan ship to concentrated fire from multiple directions. The USS Retribution closed to within 5,000 kilometers before Admiral Hayes transmitted his final message. "This is for Captain Sullivan and his crew. This is for the miners you murdered. This is to show the galaxy that humans don't surrender." At the last moment, Hayes changed course slightly. Instead of ramming the Vulcan ship directly, the Retribution scraped along its hull, human energy weapons firing at point-blank range into alien armor. The collision stripped away the Vulcan ship's shields and weapon clusters, leaving it crippled, but intact. "Why didn't he ram us?" Yethmar asked in confusion. Zethkar understood with growing horror. "Because he wants us to survive. He wants us to tell other Vulcans what happened here." The battle continued around them, but it was no longer a battle in any conventional sense. The humans had evolved beyond trying to destroy the Vulcan ships completely. Instead, they were systematically crippling them, turning proud warships into helpless hulks. Captain David Park led his squadron in a technique that Zethkar had never seen before. The human ships flew in tight formation directly at a Vulcan battlecruiser, firing everything they had. At the last second, they scattered in different directions, each ship targeting a different section of the alien vessel. Within minutes, the Ace battlecruiser had lost engines, weapons, and life support. "Sir," his aide reported with awe, "these humans are fighting like they have nothing to lose." Because they don't, Zethkar realized. Look at their attack patterns. They're not trying to survive this battle. They're trying to do as much damage as possible before they die. But the humans weren't dying as quickly as they should have. Their ships were smaller and faster than Vulcan vessels, flown by pilots who seemed to understand that their survival mattered less than completing their mission. When human ships were damaged, they didn't retreat for repairs. They accelerated toward the nearest Vulcan target and attempted ramming attacks. The USS Independence, commanded by Captain Robert Kim, lost half its hull to a Vulcan energy beam. Instead of retreating, Kim pushed his dying ship toward a Vulcan destroyer and rammed it at full speed. Both ships died in the collision, but Kim's sacrifice took another enemy vessel out of the fight. "This is madness," Yethmar whispered. "They're all insane." Zethkar watched another human ship, the USS Defiant, execute a suicide run against a Vulcan cruiser. The human vessel's reactor had been damaged and was leaking radiation that would kill the crew within hours. Instead of surrendering or trying to escape, the captain flew his ship directly into the alien vessel's engine section. "They're not insane," Zethkar said quietly. "They're something worse. They're determined." The tide of battle was turning in, ways that defied all military logic. The humans had started with 30 ships against 19 Vulcan vessels. By conventional calculations, the aliens should have won easily. But human tactics didn't follow conventional logic. Human ships that were damaged beyond repair became guided missiles. Human crews that faced certain death chose the manner of their dying. Human captains who lost their weapons used their ships as weapons. "Sir," Kraltek reported with disbelief, "we've lost 12 ships. 12 against primitive human technology." Zethkar felt something cold settle in his stomach. In 50 years of conquest, he had never lost a single ship. Now these humans had destroyed more than half his fleet using tactics that seemed to come from a nightmare. "All ships, prepare to retreat," he ordered. "Sir?" His aide stared at him in shock. "You heard me. We're leaving." "Now." Zethkar turned, away from the tactical display showing his fleet's destruction. "These humans don't fight wars. They fight apocalypses, and I don't want to be here when their reinforcements arrive." As the surviving Velkan ships began their retreat from the new Haven system, Zethkar realized that everything had changed. The Velkan Empire's age of bloodless conquest was over. They had encountered a species that preferred death to surrender, and that preference made them the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever seen. Behind them, Admiral Hayes broadcast a final message that would echo across space to every listening ear in the galaxy. "Let it be known that humanity will not be enslaved. Let it be known that we fight back, and let it be known that anyone who threatens human colonies will face the consequences." The humans had won, not through superior technology or greater numbers, but through sheer, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. It was a lesson the galaxy would not soon forget. 3 months after the Battle of New Haven, former Commander Zethkar sat in a shabby cantina on a neutral trading station at the edge of Velkan space. His military uniform had been stripped of rank insignia weeks ago when the Imperial High Command decided he needed a scapegoat for the disaster that had befallen the First Fleet. Across the small table from him sat Ambassador Carl Mitchell, a middle-aged human with graying hair and calm eyes. The ambassador had requested this meeting through back channels, claiming he wanted to understand what had happened at New Haven from the Velkan perspective. "You destroyed my career," Zethkar said bitterly, taking a drink from his glass of Alterian spirits. 50 years of perfect conquests, and you humans ruined everything in a single battle." "We didn't destroy your career," Carl replied quietly. "Your empire's reaction to defeat destroyed your career. We just fought back when you tried to enslave our people." Zethkar laughed harshly. "Fought back? You committed suicide attacks against overwhelming odds. Your Admiral Hayes turned space combat into a form of insanity. Half your fleet died in that battle." "Yes, they did," Carl agreed. "And their sacrifice meant that our colony stayed free. It meant that word spread across the galaxy about what happens when someone threatens humanity. It meant that other species remembered they have a choice between surrender and resistance." The former commander's large eyes showed confusion. "But so many of your people died. For what? A single colony world that you could have rebuilt somewhere else?" Carl leaned forward slightly. "Zethkar, can I ask you something? In all your years of conquest, did any species ever willingly join your empire? Did anyone ever choose to become Velkan citizens because they believed your way of life was better? Of course not. Conquered peoples serve the empire because they must." "Exactly. Your entire civilization is built on fear and forced compliance. You never had to understand what motivates free people because you never encountered any." Carl paused, choosing his words carefully. "Humans fight for things that matter more than life itself. Freedom, dignity, the right to make our own choices, even if those choices are wrong." Zethkar took another drink. "And where has that gotten you? Your species is now at war with the most powerful empire in the galaxy. We have thousands of ships, millions of soldiers. You have a few dozen colonies and a handful of outdated vessels." "You're right," Carl admitted. "In terms of raw military power, the Velkan Empire should be able to crush humanity without much effort. But here's what you don't understand about humans. We've been fighting hopeless wars for our entire history, usually against each other." The ambassador gestured to the viewing port where stars twinkled in the darkness. "Do you know what happened on Earth during our Second World War? A small island nation stood alone against a military machine that had conquered most of Europe. By all logical calculations, they should have surrendered immediately. Instead, they fought back with everything they had. And, Zethkar asked, they won, not immediately, and not without help, but they won because they refused to accept defeat. That's what humans do. We turn impossible situations into victories through sheer stubborn determination. Zethkar's communicator chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at the display and his face paled. Another colony has revolted. The Andraxans on Kepler 7 have declared independence from the Empire. Carl nodded. Word spreads fast in space. When other species learned that it was possible to resist Velkan conquest, they started remembering what freedom felt like. This is your fault, Zethkar accused. Your species has infected the galaxy with ideas of resistance and rebellion. You're absolutely right, Carl said with a slight smile. We showed them that the Velkan Empire could be defeated. We proved that. Superior technology doesn't always win against superior determination. And now those ideas are spreading faster than your fleets can respond. The former commander's communicator chimed again. And again. Each message brought news of another uprising, another colony declaring independence, another crack in the empire that had seemed unshakable just months before. How many? Zethkar asked wearily. 47 systems have declared independence in the past month, Carl replied. The Taraxian home fleet has joined the rebellion. The Zephyrian trade union has cut all ties with the Empire. Even some of your own colony worlds are questioning whether they want to remain under Velkan rule. Zethkar stared at his drink. The Empire has stood for 1,000 years. Built on fear, Carl reminded him. And fear only works until someone proves it's possible to fight back. That's what Captain Sullivan and his crew did. They showed the galaxy that humans would rather die than surrender. They proved that the Velkan Empire could be resisted. So what happens now? Zethkar asked. Does humanity conquer the galaxy to replace us? Carl shook his head. That's not what we want. Humans believe in freedom, remember? We're not interested in building an empire. We just want to live our lives without someone else telling us how to do it. Then what do you want from this meeting? I want you to understand something that might help both our species avoid a long, bloody war. Carl leaned back in his chair. Humans don't want to destroy the Velkan Empire. We want you to stop trying to enslave people. Learn to coexist with species that choose their own governments. Trade with them instead of conquering them. Zethkar considered this. And if we refuse? Then you'll keep fighting wars against people who would rather die than surrender. You'll spend decades trying to hold together an empire that's falling, apart because it was built on forced compliance instead of willing cooperation. Carl's voice grew serious. How many ships can you afford to lose? How many soldiers? How long before your own people start questioning whether endless war is worth the cost? The former commander was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the cantina buzzed with conversations in a dozen different languages. Beings from across the galaxy mingled freely, trading goods and ideas without anyone forcing them to comply with imperial law. The High Command will never accept your terms, Zethkar said finally. Maybe not, Carl agreed. But individual Velkan commanders might. Local governors might. Common soldiers who are tired of dying for an empire that only knows how to rule, through fear might. Zethkar's communicator chimed again. This time it was a priority message from the imperial capital. He read it, and his face showed resignation. Admiral Kethrall is dead, he announced. Killed in a human suicide attack on his flagship. The Second Fleet has been scattered. 50 ships lost in a single engagement. I'm sorry for your losses, Carl said, and he sounded like he meant it. But this is what happens when you fight people who have nothing left to lose. Every battle becomes a suicide mission. Every engagement becomes a choice between victory and mutual destruction. Your people are insane, Zethkar muttered. No, we're free, and we've learned that freedom is worth any price. Carl stood up from the table. I'm going to leave you with something to think about. The Velkan Empire can adapt to a galaxy where some species choose their own path, or it can spend the next century fighting wars against enemies who prefer death to slavery. The ambassador paused at the cantina's entrance. Captain Sullivan and his crew didn't die to start a war. They died to prove that resistance was possible. Now the galaxy knows. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? After Carl left, Zethkar sat alone with his drink and watched the news feeds on the cantina's display screens. Colony after colony was declaring independence. Velkan fleets were being defeated by species that had been enslaved for decades. The empire that had seemed eternal was crumbling because it had encountered a species that simply refused to surrender. The former commander ordered another drink and tried to imagine a galaxy where the Velkan Empire coexisted with free worlds instead of ruling them. It seemed impossible. But then again, so had the idea of humans choosing death over surrender. Maybe impossibility was just another word for something that hadn't happened yet. Outside the cantina's windows, ships from 100 different worlds moved through space, without fear of Velkan interception. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was learning what freedom looked like, and it all started because one small human ship had refused to surrender.